We're back. This is the cutting room floor, and I'm Jason. The cutting room floor is a product of Smyrna Presbyterian Church, and once a week we sit down with our pastors after the Lord's Day sermon to just discuss with them, hey, Joel, what was on the cutting room floor? So today we have Joel here, and I'm going to ask him the question. Hey, Joel, what was on the cutting room floor after Sunday's sermon? Take it away.
Hey, Jason, good to be back with you. This is the late night version. I don't know what time people are watching this, but for us, the later night version of the cutting room floor. But we wanted to still bring it to you this week, and glad to be back. So we are in Acts chapter 5. We finished out the chapter, about 30 verses, bigger section, but one that pretty much is linked together. And there's a couple of things that I think are important that kind of highlighted in the sermon, but wanted to highlight a little bit more with our time tonight. And I think this section is just a study on the fear of God versus the fear of man. And I think in that way it is extremely convicting. Because I don't know about you, Jason, but I can struggle with the fear of man more than the fear of God at times. And I think anybody that's flesh and blood and human it does the same. But you see in verse 13 of this passage, talks about how the apostles were there in the Solomon's portico and in the temple and teaching and preaching. In verse 13, it says, none of the rest dared join them. And there's some kind of commentary. It could be those that were believers, those that were disciples, those that were interested but hadn't quite signed their name on the dotted line, so to speak, or followed the disciples of the apostles. But nonetheless, there is some fear there of wanting to go in public and being with the apostles, knowing that it's going to face opposition, because you remember in the chapter before, Peter and John have already been arrested, and now they're back doing the same thing. And so it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that hey, this is probably going to happen once again. And you read a little bit farther, and sure enough, you exactly have the same thing that takes place. And this time they arrest all of the apostles, not just Peter and John. And it's interesting here on you see again the contrast between those that are servants of Christ and servants of God, and those that would be seemingly or so-called servants of God. But you really begin to see here that how this is night and day difference. There's a stark difference between the high priest during that time and the Sadducees versus the apostles. You see it in verse 17. It talks about how they're filled with jealousy, and that's the motivation for the reason why they arrested the apostles. And again, you see that they might have had at one point maybe good intentions to serve the Lord, serve God, but those had been hijacked, and they begin to really just serve themselves and want to stay in power and keep everything that they can to remain that way. And in fact, you keep on going down after the angel releases the apostles from prison. The captains find out that they're out back in the temple preaching again. And it says they went and brought them, but not by force, because they were afraid of being stoned by the people. So again, you see this aspect of even the high priests and the officials were really doing things out of the fear of man and wanting to stay in power. And the beauty of this passage, and the part that's really convicting, is the apostles don't really seem to care.
Right.
They know that they're on a mission from the Lord and are going to do it. If that means being arrested, if that means being put in prison, if that means, as it talks about at the end of this chapter, that they need to be beaten 40 minus 1 lashes, they're willing to do it, counted worthy to suffer dishonor for the name. And again, this is just, I think, so crucial. This is a textbook study on fear of God versus fear of man, and what true servanthood looks like, and what true service to the Lord looks like, and those that are just in name only and really want to seek power and recognition and a name for themselves. And I think in this day and age, you still see that, don't you, in various circles, sadly, that something that may have started with good intentions can be derailed very easily because of sinful human hearts and desire for glory and promotion and self-recognition.
I like it. No, that's excellent. Thank you for pointing that out. And I think it lends itself to the point that we should continually monitor our motivations and our intentions, ever reforming. We're always acknowledging that we can be off. I could get off in this, and we should always, let's bring it right back. And I think those small, because you mentioned something that maybe they did have good intentions. Every time we've seen the Sadducees and Pharisees, their intentions were ill. So we're like, man, how long have they been off? Like they've been off for a long time. I've never seen them on point. I've never seen them doing right for right's sake. So needless to say, I think they're also a great example of how far off you can get and still be in your mind thinking you're doing the right thing.
Right.
They literally threw in the lot to kill Christ, thinking they were doing the right thing.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You killed Jason because got you. You got Joel. Okay. But you literally had God in front of you, and you threw in your lot to have him killed. So, I think it just goes to show that we should constantly be monitoring and checking our motivations and making sure that, I had good motivations yesterday, or I was really wanting to seek God yesterday and please God yesterday. Where am I today? Where am I this minute almost? Just to keep ourselves on track. But that's just something I picked up from it.
Absolutely. It's one other thing that's interesting here. You have this, they get arrested once again and brought in, and then they get put out, and you have this advice from Gamaliel, the teacher of the law. This is who was held in honor by all the people. Interestingly enough, we know that Saul of Tarsus, soon to be Paul, after his conversion, it was one of the disciples of Gamaliel. And interestingly enough, Saul might have been there while this was all going on. Probably good likelihood that he was. And in fact, how does Luke know this kind of insider information on what Gamaliel said while the apostles were put out? Probably could have been because of Paul being there at that time. And obviously Luke traveled with Paul in his journeys. So that's a good probability that that's where the information came from. But, a lot of commentators will say that, Gamaliel gives us this great advice. And there's some wisdom here. He's probably an older man that had seen some things. And obviously he kind of recounts some of the history of false messiahs and says, if this is of man, it comes of nothing. But if it's of God, you won't be able to overthrow him. You might even be opposing God. And again, not bad advice. We won't say that. But it's just, it's out of convenience. He again doesn't call the council to examine the things that are being taught. They don't, try to get into a discussion about the resurrection and about Christ and if he truly was the Messiah. It doesn't, kind of take into consideration any of the truth. Just kind of says, hey, this is the most convenient way that we can deal with these men. Again, it goes back to I think not wanting to cause a stir, not wanting to cause disruption in Jerusalem, and doing the thing that could be the best, or maybe not the best, but the easiest way for them to kind of get off the hook, so to speak. So you gotta call them out on that. But nevertheless, the Lord uses it for their release. and allows them to continue to minister even after this. So it's interesting how in the first time they get arrested, you got supernatural intervention with the angel coming and releasing them. And the second time, it's nonetheless a rescue of God, but it's using, an intermediate, that being Gamaliel, a man, his own advice, not even Christian, but we would say that both of these are rescues from the Lord in the way that he provided and allowed the apostles to continue to do what they were called to do and what he wanted them to do.
I like it. Would you say the Gamaliel's solution was just pragmatism? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
This works. This'll work. This dog will hunt. You like to hear people say, or whatever like that. But this is just an example of pragmatism, rather than digging into taking the time to investigate the truth claims of Christ and the transformation of the apostles. Look, let's just stop fighting with them. Let them do what they're going to do. If it's going to fail, it's going to fail. And if it's God, then you'll be fighting God.
Right. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But, I think the takeaway from this, for myself and hopefully for you and the listeners out there is that, the Lord calls us to obedience, calls us to faithfulness. And we don't have to be so concerned about what the results will be in the sense of, what it is that is the fruit of it, or even, what will happen to us as long as we continue to remain faithful to the Lord, that he will provide for us, and he will use that faithfulness and obedience, even if it means opposition, even if it means persecution. He's going to use that for, in the end of the day, his work will be done and his kingdom will advance.
And amen to that. Well, Joel, I appreciate it. Thank you for this late night cutting room floor. I'm looking forward to this next Sunday, and we'll continue to plow through the book of Acts, and we'll see you, I guess, next week, and we'll ask you, hey, Joel, what's on the cutting room floor? Thanks today, man.
All right. Good night.
Take care.